Good evening. We welcome you all to the July 6th Troy City Council meeting. And we ask that if you have a cell phone electronic device that you please turn it off at this time. And it affects our audio equipment. This evening, for our invocation, Councilman Wayne Fleming is going to do the invocation, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Wade.
Okay. Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for each person here this evening and each family represented, Lord. We just thank you for the privilege we have to serve you and to serve our community, Lord. Lord, we know that everything that you do is perfect and in order from the time you created this world, Lord. That you are not the author of confusion, Father. Our prayer tonight is that everything that we do, Lord, will be in order and that we will do your work, Father, and everything that comes at this meeting, Lord, is your will. Just direct our time, Lord, and our words and our thoughts as we conduct the business of this city. Father, we just ask your blessings again upon this meeting, our time together. These things we pray in your precious name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Mrs. Bartholomew, will we have the roll call?
Mayor Schilling.
Here.
Councilmember Beltramini.
Here.
Broomfield.
Here.
Eisenbacher.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Howrlack.
Here.
Kerwin.
Here.
Quorum present. We begin this evening with two presentations. First, we're going to have a legislative update from our state representative, Marty Nolenberg. And so I'll call on him at this time to come forward. Good evening. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. It's great to be here. I think I'm going to stick with one topic on hand, and that's the budget. And just to preface that a little bit, our budget is greatly predicated on the economy and jobs. And that is the issue that we're all dealing with. It's an issue that you are dealing with here in Council. It's an issue that we're dealing with at the state. And it's a huge, huge problem. We are just now starting our fiscal year 2010 budget, which begins on October 1st. But before I start with that, I want to go back. Back in May, we had a revenue estimating conference for the current fiscal year, which ends this September 30th. And we found ourselves $1.3 billion deficit. And it largely stemmed from the fact that the revenues just were not coming in. Companies aren't hiring people, they're not making money, and as a result, we're not getting the business tax revenue from companies. Because people aren't working, we're not collecting income tax from people, and because it's not working, they can't spend money, we're not collecting sales tax from the money that they would normally spend. So it's definitely a trickle-down problem. And as a result of finding that we were short, we came up with about $350 million worth of cuts, and we're able to use the stimulus money to plug in the hole for the rest of it, which is almost $1 billion. Moving forward, at that same revenue estimating conference was projected revenues for next year. And no surprise, it's worse for next year than it is this year. And we're expecting a $1.7 billion deficit in fiscal year 2010, which again begins on October 1st. So we're trying to balance that budget, much like what you're trying to do here. And so far, we have passed out all of the budgets. And right now, they're sitting in a conference committee to iron out the differences. The reality is we will, again, be using stimulus money to help balance that budget. And I hate to use the term stimulus money because it isn't stimulus money. It's really a bailout to states. And I think you need to remember that. I was taught that stimulus It's when you stimulate something, when you grow, when you expand. And unfortunately, given the state's current economic crisis, they're unable to use that money for that purpose. Now, Michigan's not alone. Many other states are suffering from the same problem that Michigan has. The state of California had a $23 billion deficit. So we're certainly not alone. I hate to paint a gray picture here, but I know it impacts all of you and the things that you want to do on city council. Obviously, revenue sharing is going to take a hit. The question is how much? And the reality is, you can do one of two things. You can cut spending, and we're trying to do that, or you can raise taxes. It's that simple. And you can raise taxes, but it still won't. You still can't collect enough in taxes to cover the deficit that we see. My view, I shouldn't say my view, the calls that I've been getting from constituents in the 41st district, they don't want their taxes raised. They simply don't. They're hurting themselves. We had a forum back in March about how to better understand your property taxes. It was lined out the door. It was sold out. People, they're in flux right now. They're in a difficult situation. So with that, I'm happy to open up for questions.
Councilman Beltran, did you say you had a question based on the information you received in the email, or do you want to ask him individually?
No, it's fine. Your office sent some information on the transportation funding. And I was concerned because the information from your office said that we would be losing over $100 million in federal funding.
I
think
can
actually it's
clarify
the
that.
$100 million that we can't match, isn't it?
Yeah, I can clarify that. I saw that email myself. It's in order for Michigan, right? If Michigan doesn't come up with $100 million, right, we're going to lose between $500 million and $600 million of federal matching money. So I wish I could say I wrote that, but I didn't. But they caught it. I caught it. So
Okay.
if that clarifies things, we have to come up with $100 million so that we can match. I think it's $500 to $600 million of federal money, and I think the state's going to need to prioritize that.
Yeah.
It would be foolish of us to not come up with that money. I mean, if you look at the priorities of state government, transportation is one of them. Roads are top of the list.
That was my concern because the money we're losing is in essence half of our transportation funding budget.
I think you're finding that there is bipartisan support for that. I'd be very surprised if we don't get to that we don't get those dollars.
It's good to hear.
So,
Anyone else have a question? We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
thank you.
Our next presentation will be by Jennifer Lawson, who is going to do our 2009 Rouge Rescue River Day celebration. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Jennifer Lawson. I'm the environmental specialist for the city in the engineering department. And a few weeks ago, I was asked to give a little summary of River Day. What'd you do? What'd you clean up? And I got to thinking that it's really a celebration. In these times, looking at an opportunity to build that sense of community as well as celebrate our resources in the city. It wasn't gonna work. So why do we celebrate River Day? We have an abundance of water resources in the city. We have an abundance of natural resources in the city. Our wetlands, our woodlands, and our creeks and streams make and build the landscape that the city of Troy is created on. But what's really important is these kids. I can't tell you how many kids, elementary school, 5- and 6-year-olds that come with their parents, that look for that opportunity to just get in the river and get dirty and find the toads and find the frogs and pick out the crayfish. but we're building a sense of appreciation. We're building a sense of, wow, I have this great backyard that I can go play in. And it's not concrete. It's not asphalt. It's our natural resources. What benefit can we expect? Well, aside from the cleaning up the river, it's that community sense that I mentioned. It's neighbors working hand in hand. It's people from Canada, from Ohio that were here for a visit. It's church organizations and high school science groups all working hand in hand, side by side, to celebrate our resources. I wanted to give some feel-good stats for what we did actually accomplish. This year we were out at the Stage Nature Center on Coolidge Highway. We planted a 700 square foot rain garden with native wildflowers and wetland species. We installed 150 feet of a stream bank buffer using native seed. We removed over 35 bags of garlic mustard, which, although edible, it is an invasive exotic species that is overtaking the bottom layer of our woodlands. We cleaned up over, I believe, a half mile of wood chip pathway, installing new wood chips, allowing more access to our pathways. We removed woody debris, which is the picture you saw of the kids getting muddy, an estimated quarter mile of stream from the Rouge River. And as an added bonus, because we had so many volunteers, we performed some landscape care out at the Stage Nature Center. These images are the rain garden after installation. On the top two pictures, the bottom left is our wood chip pathway being installed, and the bottom right is a young lady pulling garlic mustard. And she had no clue what it was, but she knew she had to pull it all out. More pictures of everyone getting muddy and dirty. I do want to point out on the bottom right is a group from Spalding D. Decker Associates, which is our engineering consultant. They come out every year like clockwork, and they are probably one of the groups that has the largest amount of manual labor. I just give them shovels and point. We did have a few special occasions. When we got there early that morning, there was a mother snapping turtle laying eggs right next to the walkway in the middle of our project area. And so we roped that off, but we were able to use it as a educational piece that, yes, there is wildlife here. This is what we are protecting. And the spectacle of her going back into the river after she was done was absolutely one of the highlights of the day. We also were able this year to participate in the Champion Tree Program. This is a exact hybrid replication of the Champion Black Willow tree, the largest black willow tree in the state of Michigan. And we were able, through a grant with Friends of the Rouge, to get 2 of these. And so we now have 2 of them planted on the banks out at the pond at the Nature Center. And I wanted to say a special thanks to my coworkers, Stacy Yankee, Ron Hind, Ed Karpus, Jeff Bigler, Pam and Mike Brady, our resident extraordinaires. Lance Oakley, a previous employee of the city, came back as our chef. That's what he loved to do, and so he cooked hamburgers and hot dogs for over 150 people. But by far and above, I want to thank administration and staff for allowing an opportunity like this, because this is one of our largest events that we do in the engineering department, the Parks and Rec department. But I can't tell you how many times I had residents come up and say, why don't you do this more? You should do one in the fall. We've got more parks that we can work on. And I explained to them that I need a lot more coffee and a lot more patience. But I did want to bring to your attention this wonderful event that we were able to host, and look forward to seeing some of you there next year, possibly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you know, but Pam Brady is going to do a little segue to assist you, probably say some good things about you, Jennifer. So Pam, would you come up with, I know your item is in connection with this, so that's why I'm calling on you now instead of items that are not on the agenda.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I know I wrote a letter to this effect, but I want to reiterate it since it is very important. There was an added benefit to the River Day cleanup that wasn't listed in her presentation just now. Those 150 volunteers got to work side by side with each other with the common goal of repairing damage our activities and inactivities had done to Mother Earth. Someone said we have 81 languages spoken in the various homes in Troy besides English. I can't even name 81 countries, but I believe it to be true. However, while language is a barrier, love of nature and gardening and planting and doing good for Mother Earth is a common bond. We work side by side with people with like priorities and goals. The River Day cleanup this year, and Troy is lucky because it drains into 2 watersheds, both the Rouge and the Clinton, and Jennifer is very good about switching them so that we do a little in each every year, is a time when we all come together and build community without spoken language and interact with our neighbors in a common work project. It's more than just saying hi, or watching them dance, or trying their foods in a local restaurant, or Troy Days or other event. It is actually getting on our knees and working in the soil side by side with our neighbors, wherever they are from, and getting to know each other by our actions. No matter how hard we work, how hot it is, how many mosquitoes find their way to one piece of bare skin that didn't get sprayed, or how much muck we rake, it is a very positive day. Every action we perform is a good thing that day. Kudos to the staff members, Jennifer Lawson, Ron Hine, Jeff Bigler, Stacy Yankee, and others who worked together on this project so that things went off like clockwork. We got there about 45 minutes early and they were prepared. They were ready to go. Even though we have budget problems, this creates a lot of bang for the buck. Please, in your continued cutting, leave this event in place. It is important for creating the sense of community that bands us together like nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate all the citizens and their friends and neighbors and people from out of town that we're visiting that help, because it is building a sense of community when volunteers get together, and actions do speak louder than words. Yes. But your words help also with what Jennifer presented, and each council meeting, John Zerling has arranged for a staff member to present a program or an event that is going on so that the community will better understand all the things that we have going on here. And I know you've been an integral part of that, so thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll go on now. There are no carryover items or public hearings tonight, but there is a postponed item, and that is the amendments to the Troy City Code, the updates of Chapter 82, Property Maintenance Code, amendments to Chapter 48, Litter, Chapter 82B, Dangerous Buildings, Chapter 88, Nuisance, and deletion of Chapter 89, Weed Control, because that's in another area now. So, Mr. Stymack, are you presenting again?
Mr. Stymack is presenting unless he's interrupted by Brian Murphy or myself.
Oh, okay. I just assumed, because that's how the segue went before, but John, would you like to say something first? And
oh, to expedite matters, no thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. You have this item on your agenda. It's item D1. It's a postponed item from the June 15th meeting. In the packet this evening, which is rather large, numerous documents, there is the proposed text for the new Chapter 82, and that text includes some revisions that were made in response to questions or comments that were raised at the June 15th meeting. And rather than go through the entire text again, I'll just kind of go through some of those highlights of those changes that were done. And officially, those the actual text amendments, what is actually being deleted, stricken, or inserted, appears directly after the boilerplate documentation for the adoption of Chapter 82. Unfortunately, I don't have the page number in front of me, but it does appear in your agenda directly after that documentation. But what we did since the meeting of the 15th is we added documentation requirements to Section 102.8 on requirements not covered by code, so those are clearly instituted in the record. We took the right of entry language and revised that so that the language there mirrors the requirements that are found within the Michigan Building Code. Officially, the Michigan Building Code is adopted on a statewide basis. We don't have any opportunity to amend it. In the Property Maintenance Code, we would be allowed to do amendments. It is not mandated by the state that the language be identical, but from a staff standpoint, we didn't see why there would be any benefit to have different language in the two different documents. So the language that is proposed to be inserted in Section 104.4 on right of entry is basically the identical language from the Michigan Building Code. We also modified the language found in Section 105.1 on modifications, and also looked at the provisions for the time frame for council action or for petitioner action on a council decision on an appeal of a dangerous building. The previous language basically had 21 days to either repair or demolish. In looking at the state statute, the Michigan housing law that establishes the authority to claim a dangerous building and to require its removal, within that state statute, they do allow for up to 60 days for an order to repair. They do still have the 21-day for an order to demolish. So we have inserted that language, which would be in compliance with the state statute. We also added a definition for deadbolt. There was no definition within the text of the Property Maintenance Code. I did some research with the Architectural Manufacturers Hardware Association to get a definition of deadbolt, and actually had to put about 3 or 4 different definitions to go together. But the definition, in speaking with their staff, does meet they're in agreement with that definition for a deadbolt. We also identified an allowable option for wireless interconnection of smoke detectors. State-of-the-art technology does have smoke detectors that can communicate with each other wirelessly. They are approved and listed by Underwriters Laboratory. So although we would have allowed that under an alternative material and method, we've specifically put language in there that recognizes that fact. And we also added an exemption for tree branches so that they're not deemed to be rubbish when they occur in an area which is part of a preservation and restoration area. So in addition to not having to necessarily mow the grass or the weeds on a regular basis, you also are provided some exemption from picking up branches that may fall in that area. As well, we corrected some of the formatting and other errors that were in the original document. Subsequent to the publishing of tonight's agenda, we received additional comments from members of council. And on your table this evening, you should have a yellow document which is further modification of the Chapter 82 code. And in that we have, there's also a question and answer document in there that addresses those. We did have a couple of language questions with regards to the term that was in Section 105.1, subject to adhere. And in reviewing that, we have proposed that language be replaced with required to comply. We also, there was a typo in Section 302.8 that was not picked up previously, where the word "and" A&D exists, and it should in fact be A-N, and. There was also a word missing in section 307.4.1 where the word removal should have followed the word voluntary in the first sentence. Involuntary. So it should say eviction or involuntary removal. And lastly, in reviewing the document, we also noticed a typo in the numbering in section 108. It's shown in the original text as 108.1.8.2, and actually that number should be 108.1.1.9, salvage materials. So if council does decide to take action on this, we would ask that in consideration for the property maintenance code in chapter 82, that you would adopt the resolution with the changes that appear on your table this evening. In addition, with the other ordinances that we are asking to amend based on your hopeful adoption of the new property maintenance code, we brought forward the memos and we brought forward the resolutions from the June 15th meeting. Unfortunately, those proposed resolutions or those proposed adoptions still carry the July 1st effective date. And although your resolution in your agenda this evening has an August 1st date, officially it says adopts the proposal prepared by staff effective August 1st, but the proposal prepared by staff has a July 1st date on it, so we wanted to try and avoid any confusion there. So we have prepared new adoption language for Chapter 48, for 82B, for 88 and 89. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that members might have.
I have one in regarding to the extension of the time for city council action. If the council determines that a building or structure is a dangerous or unsafe building or structure, the building structure should be demolished or made habitable. Council shall order either demolition within 21 days or require that all necessary repairs be completed within 60 days, which used to be after the hearing. I note in the yellow document that it says that the 60-day time limit is permitted for an order to repair under the Michigan housing law. And is that why that time frame was suggested?
Yes, the Michigan housing law does have two different times. The current text of the dangerous building ordinance 82B has one time frame, which is 21 days to either demolish or repair. And there was some discussion, and that was the language we proposed to bring forward with the new property maintenance code. There was some discussion at the meeting on June 15th that the 21-day time frame was too short of a time perspective. In staff's review of the enabling legislation from the state, we found that there in fact are two different time frames. The 21 days would apply to an order to demolish, and within 60 days would be for an order to repair. We brought that language through basically exactly as it appears in the state language.
Okay. And how much time then from the initial time that the building has been tagged by the city staff that the building is dangerous or not habitable, before it even comes to city council? There's a time frame in there. I'm looking for the total time that the folks would have to repair a building if it's in such condition.
Yeah. That varies significantly. In response to questions by members of council, we did some research. In the last 10 years, in my 10-year tenure, there have been two buildings which we have brought to council for an appeal on a dangerous structure determination. One of which was in 2001. The original posting of the house, the original inspections on the house where we determined that there were deficiencies, was done approximately 5 years before the item actually came to council for final determination on it. The other one was a building that had a fire, and the fire occurred on the 5th of April, and the 27th of October is when the item appeared on council's agenda for the determination. So it goes somewhere between 6 months and 5 years.
My concern is, if it truly is a dangerous or uninhabitable building, the time frame that is allowed poses a danger, I would think, to the surrounding neighborhood. And I'm curious as to why such a long time period would be allowed. Now, I know this doesn't happen very often. It's very rare that we've had this occur in Troy, but it can happen. And I would think that we would, there should be some kind of a, is the building then boarded up, fenced off or something, so that surrounding neighborhood children or adults would not be harmed in any way by trying to enter that building?
Well, certainly, even under these conditions, and in both the cases that I cited previously, the buildings were secured against trespass immediately.
Okay.
So it's not like we have an open structure subject to trespass that is out there. Now, a home which is boarded up and obviously vacant certainly may become an attractive nuisance to individuals who might wish to do that wouldn't try and enter a structure that is obviously occupied when these structures are obviously unoccupied. So there's a potential for a greater likelihood that someone could enter the structure if they know that it's unoccupied, and obviously a half-burnt out, boarded up structure is visibly unoccupied. Once again, the time frame that was proposed there was in accordance with what is provided for in the state statute. It is certainly possible that if council does, as a result of the public hearing, order the repairs. First of all, these are structures that probably have significant defects to them. And to say that those repairs could be accomplished in 21 days, which is what the current text is, certainly may be an undue burden on someone, and council may find that. If I may, the one case that I cited that came to council in 2001, officially council gave them a year to make the repairs on the structure because it was, at least in my opinion, in being at the hearing in that, the members of council felt that it was not possible for them to make those repairs in 21 days. So they actually gave them actually a year and 3 weeks to make those repairs. They ultimately never made the repairs, and we had the structure demolished. But that was the time frame that was established there.
Other questions that folks have on this item? Councilman Eisenbacher?
I'd like to see if your memory is better than mine on that second one where we had the condemnation with the burned out house. They had an insurance problem, if I remember right, where the insurance company was not cooperating with the rebuild. So if a resident had a house fire, if council and staff didn't have the options of some leeway, as soon as the insurance company didn't come through in a certain period of time, they'd be forced to tear down the house, assuming they didn't have other means of fixing it. So having this clause of giving the council the option of a longer time or the option of a 21-day tear down would allow for problems with insurance companies and weather and 1,000 different factors that could cause problems with a person rebuilding their house. But, okay, it was insurance.
There, in our records from the file, there was an indication that there was a question on the insurance regarding that structure, yes.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on the items that are here? Councilwoman Kerwin, do I see you signaling? I'm trying to
Yeah,
look around everybody.
I agree. The 60 days seems like a long time in terms of the timeline that was laid out before us. It isn't after it's before council, it's throughout the whole tagged process. So in fact, this house could for 6 months become a dangerous nuisance, and that is a concern. I do agree. I think the 60 may be a little wide. I can certainly see a compromise with my colleagues to go somewhere between 21 and 60. 60 seems a little long. 21 we might go beyond, and I'm hoping we can do that. We do know that safety is a #1 concern with all of us, and we also recognize that part of the pillars of prosperity, which is cited so frequently through MML, the first pillar is attractive cities and neighborhoods. It's something that we need. It's a standard that we set. And I think there needs to be a little bit more teeth in the 60 days upon our hearing.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Yes, I got a few things, and in the there's a section, I don't know if it's in section 100 section or 300 section, but it regards weeds and grasses and things of that nature, and it makes a reference to 10 inches. And I was curious as to where 10 inches for turf grass came from.
The, if I may, Mayor.
I'm looking for what page number. What?
52.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Snyder?
The 10-inch standard comes from the, the base document that we have here is based on the International Code Council Property Maintenance Code 2006 edition. And the 10-inch standard comes from that document, and it's equal to the document that we have in place now, which is based on the 1993 Boca Property Maintenance Code, which also uses the 10-inch standard.
And for measurement purposes, you are measuring from the soil thatch interface, is that correct?
Basically, yes.
Okay. My issue is that, during the summer, during normal summer conditions, that would be adequate. However, one may be required to cut a lawn in greater frequency than once a week in conditions that are ripe in the spring, and in this part of the country, you can get grass growing in excess of 1 inch a day. And when you're cutting to 3 to 4 inches, then you could have, especially if you couldn't cut on the 7th day, you could easily be at 14 inches in a week to 9 days. That's my concern there. Another item in that section, it says, let's see here. There's an exception. It says preservation or restoration areas are allowed to exceed 10 inches in height if those areas do not contain any turf grass and or weeds. And you read the turf grass description, it includes references to ryegrass, bluegrass, and fescues, some of which actually are native grasses to Michigan that existed long before humans. And therefore, if you take a walk in the woods, they're around. And my other concern is when the city violates this, what do we do? Because as you know, over by the aquatic center, we're allowing that to go to natural state. However, it's vegetated with ryegrass, bluegrass, and fescues. So should we spray something on there to destroy the entire vegetation? What would you suggest?
First of all, let me say you're out of my area of expertise, and I know my limits, and things that grow after you install them are things I'm not very knowledgeable about. However, I do know that the plans are for those areas that are being allowed to go natural is to overseed them with natural seed so that they would eventually return to that natural state as opposed to the bluegrass and the turf grasses that may exist there now. It is generally, it's my understanding in talking with other members of staff, this is an item which doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but if it is part of an identified plan of action that is carried through, it can be accomplished over time.
I guess my concern is, and by the way, I think you and your department do a good job. My concern is that if we do have people who are perhaps less than understanding than the people that are working for you now. Maybe 20 years from now, when we have this language in here that allows for certain things to happen, then people who are well-intentioned can be caught up into it. And I'm just looking for some suggestions as to how we can move this forward, but that is one of my areas of concern.
If I may, the concern is not allowing for the natural or the restoration and preservation areas, or allowing for them?
Well, a couple things. One is, I think if somebody is showing an intent to maintain their property, say, for example, to maintain their turf grass at a level below 10 inches, there needs to be some level of exception in case of, rainy conditions in the spring, or whatever the case may be. But if the person, I think, is making an intent to maintain their property by cutting it frequently, I think they're meeting at least the spirit, maybe not the letter of what we have here. And I'm curious as to how we might allow that person to still be in accord, if you will, with the ordinance.
Sorry. If I may, with regards to the implementation of this, which certainly is a big piece to this issue, and specifically with regards to the grass cutting, what we typically find in our enforcement activities, it is not that the grass gets to 11 inches or that the grass gets to 10 and a half inches or the grass, that homeowners are away for a weekend. To be honest with you, that's why the 10-inch number has worked with us fairly well, because it really is the extreme condition where a weekly mowing would get you more than 10 inches of grass. What we typically find is that people either cut their grass or they don't cut their grass, ever. And those are easy to define. Those are easy to identify out in the field to say this yard has been mowed and this one has not. So our history with this and our enforcement with this is there has rarely been a case where someone's come out and said, we were really only 9.5 inches and you cited me for 10 inches. It was 2 foot tall and the limit is 10 inches. As well, if the properties that we're talking about are not habitual offenders, they're not those properties that never cut their lawn, the first correspondence that you'll hear from us is a letter saying, here's the rules, your lawn exceeds this, and you have, in most cases, 10 days to comply. In your example of rapid wheat or rapid grass growth under those ideal conditions, in effect, they should cut it 2 times in that 10 days that we give them to cut it once. So now, if they are properties that didn't cut their grass last year and didn't cut their grass the year before that and haven't cut their grass this year, they may not get the same, when the grass is 24 inches tall, we're not going to probably send them a letter saying, have you forgot about mowing the lawn? We know they're not going to cut it because they haven't done so historically. So those, under the proposed language, with the notice sent out in March, would just be cut and billed for that service, as we've done it in the past few years.
And I think you brought up a good point. Now, let me ask you, this does apply to commercial buildings as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay. That, as you may be aware, is becoming a problem with the level of vacancies kind of working its way through different classes of real estate. If to use an example, the old Kmart headquarters is getting progressively worse, and we've had weeds in excess of 5 feet tall there, which are clearly noxious weeds. How would your department handle that? Because you could make a good distinction that is actually a prime example of a building that should be condemned, because it does meet the criteria here in your dangerous building definition.
Yeah, it could. The question of whether it's suitable for its intended purpose, I guess it depends on how much money you wanted to throw into it. There was no reason that the occupants of the building vacated it because of the conditions. It was sold and the new owners caused it to be vacated. To the best of my knowledge, the building could be reoccupied. There are certainly some maintenance issues that need to be done, but it could be reoccupied to a state without too much difficulty. But aside from that, with regards to the weeds on that site, the main lawn areas on that site are cut on a regular basis. They do have a contractor that does that. They are in the situation now where some of their non-lawn areas, cracks in between the driveways and that, are getting some weed growth that exceeds the 10 inches. And we have spoke with them about the need to maintain those areas, those traditionally non-mowed areas, the parking lots and that, where the weed growth is starting to come up through the cracks since there's no vehicular traffic in the parking lots anymore. But I think the main lawn areas are being maintained in compliance with the ordinance.
My biggest concern, and perhaps you can direct me, is with respect to foreclosed properties. And we've had discussions about the new owner, if you will, the banks or the mortgage lender taking over the premises and quite frankly not wanting to spend any money on it and therefore cutting the utilities. And of course we get a lot of rain in Michigan, and therefore they have standing water in the property, and of course it has a potential to be a mold situation, not just for the house but for the neighborhood. This, I would presume, by reading it, would allow us to perhaps aggressively pursue those situations so they don't become too problematic in the city?
Yes, so the one section, and officially it's section 301.3 in the code. One of our great tools, one of our great hammers in the property maintenance code is ultimately declaring a structure unfit for habitation and causing it to be vacated. And that's usually a tool, a motivational tool, that will cause a property owner to make corrective measures on their house because they want to live in their home. They don't want to be kicked out. They want to be able to rent their property to someone else and get that income. With regards to foreclosed properties, that tool, that motivational tool of ordering vacancy or ordering that the property be vacated is lost because the structure is already vacant. However, 301.3 specifically states that even if it's vacant, you still have to comply with everything else as if it was an occupied structure. So it puts those teeth back into the ordinance regarding vacant structures so that they can't, in all likelihood, if a property owner says, well, I don't have heat, so I can't occupy the house. Well, okay, I won't occupy the house. I don't plan on occupying it for another 6 months, so I'm not going to do anything with it in 6 months. The code, as proposed in the 2006 edition, the edition that's before you, still has that section on vacant structure that basically says even though you're vacant, you still have to comply with the same requirements.
And I will tell you, I have a grave concern about foreclosed properties basically getting a new coat of paint and carpeting and being essentially unfit for human habitation because of the possibility that there could be black mold damage throughout the entire house. But since it's got that little bit of coating on it, nobody knows until it's too late. And I think that we as a city, since we're, we should be able to keep up with the vacant buildings in the city, perhaps through conducting liaisons with the utility companies and what buildings have no utilities that are essentially listed on our property tax roll. But I think that we do have an obligation to see if there's some way that we can perhaps be a little bit more aggressive than we have in the past. But I do believe that we have the tools.
Mary, if I may.
Yes.
We've been in discussions with Detroit Edison regarding that question. They currently don't have a process by which they notify cities when there is a disconnect requested. Currently, they have, at least in the service area served by, I don't know if it's the Southeast Michigan DET or whatever, they have 21,000 structures that have utility cutoffs on them. They are looking at the possibility of coming up with a program and using Troy as a pilot for that, for notifications on that, but none currently exists. So we don't have any notification when Edison is cut off, or excuse me, when the electricity is cut off to a structure. Right now, we can call on a structure and find that information out, but as far as notifying us when a request goes in to disconnect utilities, there is no notification given to the city at this time. But we are working on that with the utility company.
Any other questions? Thank you. Would someone like to move the resolution then?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Beltramini?
I don't have a problem moving the resolution, and I appreciate the changes that staff has made, but as Mr. Steinmeck talked about, well, today's version versus last week's version versus 2 weeks ago's version, I don't know how to word that. And I never found a resolution that said as of July 6th. So if the clerk can figure out how to add the July 6th proposal prepared by city management to all of these paragraphs, I would happily move the resolution.
Mrs. Bloom, do you suggest that we add something at the beginning of this resolution?
Mayor, what you could do is you could say on page 2 of the agenda pack, there are the be it further resolved.
Right.
You could indicate that Troy City Council hereby amends Chapter 48, litter of the Troy City Code in accordance with the proposal prepared by city management and amended on July 6th, 2009.
Okay. That's
So that
second.
language and amended on July 6th could be added to all of those paragraphs.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. With that stipulation, I would move the resolution as printed and amended.
Do we have a second?
Okay.
I'll second, then get it on the table. Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by myself, that we approve the resolution with the amendments, the deletions, and the adopting, and adding the wording as amended July 6, 2009 to each of those paragraphs mentioning the chapters where we did amendments. I'd like to comment that I appreciate the time of staff working with council on specific things that members wanted to discuss or have clarified. And this was a major revision, but puts us in good stead. So I'd like to express appreciation for all of that. Councilwoman Beltramini?
I had a question for, I guess it's the city attorney. In the paragraph that says demolition within 21 days or corrective action within 60 days, should that come to us, are we limited to 21 days or 60 days, or could we review the case and go, you know what, we really think you can do this in 45 days?
It does say 60 days, so that is the, and also you can extend it beyond that if conditions warrant it. So you do have that language in there.
So,
but there would be 60 days that they could claim entitlement to.
because within is
Yes,
an
Mrs. Bloom? Or did you want to clarify that more? Is that?
I guess I don't get it if within, and I guess that's why I asked the question. I interpret that as any time within now and 60 days.
If I may just look at it just quickly here, it's one.
It doesn't say up to, and I think when we talked a few weeks ago, we talked about up to 60 days. But within is the term, I think Mr. Steinmeck said, was used in the other codes.
That was in section 108.1.1.6. I don't have the page number here.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, is that Councilwoman Brookfield that asked
I
you
would,
for next, or Councilwoman Kerwin?
I would be amenable to the up to.
Mr. Steinbeck, I see you studying your material. You have a comment?
Well, just for the benefit of Ms. Bloom as well, because I'm sure she's looking at the text here, that text of within 60 days is identical to that found within the housing law. I looked at that as well in response to the inquiries to see was it not more than 60 days or, to a time period, but it basically in the housing law says within 60 days as well, so that the language is identical.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Broomfield?
Yes, appreciate, again, as you said, Mayor, appreciate all the effort and time staff has put into this. I really do. I've got probably 4 or 5 changes or additions. This had nothing to do with staff. If I would have met with them and suggested it, it wouldn't have been something that they could have just incorporated in without bringing it back to the table for discussion. I'm not promoting postponing or study session. I wished we would have had a study session initially. I'm more than willing to bring forward those changes. I don't like to rewrite things at the table. That's why I had suggested a study session the first time this came to us. However, I'm prepared this evening to bring forward these changes and discuss them. If not, we can postpone this and move it to a study session if anybody else has concerns that they want to talk about. And again, this is not about asking for definitions from our staff. It's not about asking what a line means. These were changes that I did not feel comfortable suggesting to staff and asking them by one person out of 7 to incorporate them in a proposed resolution coming forward to the council. So I would leave it up to you if you want to hear the changes or postpone.
I think we'd have to know what the changes were.
That would be fine.
At least what's the feeling of council? And I don't know what they are. Sometimes we make changes right, at the time. Other times we find that it's too cumbersome and we need to redo. Maybe you should mention one.
Okay, that would be fine. One of the main changes would be under Section 104, duties and powers of the code official.
What?
I cannot, that's Section 104, and I'm looking for a page number on my screen and I can't find it, but it would be Section 104.
Up at the top?
A couple changes under here. And I've written it out, and this may be the appropriate place to insert this, may not, I don't know. That would be something that management could look at. But currently, the code official has the authority when they are called on either by a complaint or a request from a homeowner to inspect a furnace installation or something there at the home, that if there are other issues in the home that were not part of the request or were not part of the complaint, they can inspect or move forward in that inspection or expand their inspection. I think that's the best way to say it. And I would object to that in the sense that if a code official enters a home for an inspection of sorts, that they keep their inspection to just what they are there for. If they are there to look at a installation of a furnace, I don't know that if the hot water tank is next to it that they should go ahead and inspect the hot water tank without first showing that there is an issue for health and safety. And rather than try to go through the entire code and micromanage, which it may appear that that's what we're trying to do, but I don't want to do this, but it just seems that we have to keep putting forward our concerns. This is something we all have to live under. Every one of us in this room and listening tonight, if you have somebody come to your home and want to inspect something, there's nothing in the code that keeps them from looking at other things that are not part of the complaint or part of what you've asked them to come to inspect. So I would suggest that under Section 104, the duties and powers of the code official, that an addition be added that would guide the code official in terms of what their job is when they enter your home. So what I've written is the code official and his or her designated representatives shall inspect any complaint by a tenant or request by a homeowner specific only to the actual written complaint request. The code official and his or her designated representatives will remain in the area of the home only where the complaint request is located while said inspection is conducted. So basically what happens is they're there for that purpose and that purpose only. And I feel very strongly about this. I can't support this maintenance code. If there's not some general protection for the homeowners against expansion of inspections when they haven't been requested.
On 104.4, I'm looking at the yellow sheet that was given us tonight, the July 6th one, and it talks to it talks to that item, and it talks about the proposed text of section 104.4 is mandatory text in the Michigan Building Code. It's not mandatory text here. Staff has proposed using the same text as the Michigan Building Code for consistency. Is that the correct area, Mr. Steinbeck?
Once again, Madam Mayor, the text that we're proposing for Section 104.4 regarding right of entry is the identical text that appears in the Michigan Building Code. It is not mandatory that that identical text be used here. However, for consistency's sake, we are proposing to use that same text here so that what it says in the building code and what it says in the property maintenance code regarding rights of entry is identical.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Councilman
On this point,
Eisenbacher?
same point.
On the same?
Yeah, because we don't want to jump around.
Right, no.
I think the point is different between 104.4.
Yes.
104.4 is the reason you're coming.
Right.
I think what Councilwoman Broomfield is talking about is once you've come and you're working on this, you can't just start inspecting the whole house and everything in it. It's just, if there's something else that's wrong, that's a new inspection, you have to go through the process again. You can't just, I've invited you into my house, and that doesn't give you free reign of my whole house because I've invited you in. I've invited you in for a reason as an inspector.
Okay.
Please inspect this new water heater I put in.
Correct.
Or whatever.
Mr. Steinbeck and perhaps Mrs. Bloom would also like to respond to this. All right, Mrs. Bloom, do you want to go
Well, I
first?
just wanted to clarify, Mayor, and Councilman Eisenbecker has already pointed it out, but as I understand Councilman Broomfield's question or inquiry or request, it is to add an additional section 104.8 to limit it to the scope of the search. I would indicate that there are some remedies. I mean, certainly there is an obligation to, to not just go into every room. If you're called to look at the furnace and you go upstairs, certainly there are remedies for doing that, and that would not be permitted. But it would take court action possibly. So.
The point here is, Mayor,
Go ahead,
the point here
Councilman.
is that I read through this whole code, and there's nothing that says that the inspector is limited to what they've been called there to inspect. Now, maybe you can assume that, but unless it's written down, it happens. And I think that we need to put this, so much of this maintenance code as I go through it is written not in favor of the homeowner. And I would say that, if the homeowner has not been taking care of their property, then, we need to address that. If I had a neighbor that the outside of their house was horrid, the roof was leaking, the, porch is sagging, well, yes, that's blight. And they have a responsibility to keep their home up. But as I read through this, sometimes I wonder if this is more, not a maintenance code, but it's a rebuild code. It's a rebuild this to come up to current standards, not just maintain what you have. And in addition, it is a document that puts teeth in enforcement, and I understand that. But there has to be a consideration for the homeowner. I don't think that there's too many people in this room tonight that if you called up the building, our building department, and asked for the inspector to come, that if you gave him free reins, there'd be some violations in your home. Just out of ignorance. Not because you're not maintaining your home, not because your home is in a situation where it's an embarrassment to the community. It's just because maybe you didn't know. Or maybe that there's something there that code has changed and you didn't know. There has to be something put in here to protect our residents, our homeowners. Our home is our castle.
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I understand what the councilwoman is saying, and I'm looking at my notes. When you first brought this up, you said something to the effect of you wanted to put something in where the official could not expand the scope of his or her inspection without some proof of a health safety problem, violation. But what you proposed as language precludes even that, and that's my problem. I don't disagree with you that somebody, comes in to inspect your new hot water heater, it's next to the furnace, and they go, oh, you don't have the cover screwed on the filter right, and we're going to write you up for that. I believe that most of our inspectors would say, you can get this filter screwed on right, and please take care of it. But there may come a time when that wouldn't happen. I get that. But I don't get why, if there is a true health and safety problem, we want to preclude them from saying that and doing something about it.
Okay. Someone else has asked for the floor first. Councilwoman Kerwin, and then I'll go back to you.
And I think that's why we want to go back to intent. And in every section, intent is covered. So on page 36, 101.3 under intent, it says, this code shall be construed to secure its expressed intent, which is to ensure and promote public health, safety, and welfare. So these situations really are called in not to, I want you to check my new furnace, but someone has called in because of a health, safety, and welfare. Again, if you go to page 41, please. We have again the procedure. This is 108.1 general. The procedures set forth in this section are established to secure the health and safety of the occupants of dwellings and structures and general public. That's the intent of the code. I guess what I'm having an issue with is when we reviewed this before, we agreed that questions or individuals would come forward. The specifics that my colleague has brought up tonight could have been brought up forward in the same manner that many of these were, either with those meetings with staff as an individual or just emailed so that responses could be prepared. And I'm troubled that this, what I would normally call surprise at the table, is a pattern that's emerged. The surprises aren't necessary in order for good governance. We need to know so that research can be done on language or the specifics of each issue. And we're not struggling at the table over examples here.
Mayor?
I want to see if Mr. Steinmetz wants to respond to this particular section that's been mentioned before we, so may I call on him before I call on Mr. Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of points. And first of all, let me state that I have some concern and would want some time to discuss with the Attorney's Office what implication that might have on our inspections. But briefly off the top of my head, first of all, if we're there to inspect your water heater, we're not inspecting under the Property Maintenance Code. We're inspecting under a permit that you were issued under the Mechanical Code, and whatever language you put in here won't apply in there. Now, with that being said, if my inspector is there to inspect a water heater installation under a permit issued under the Plumbing Code, and he has to wait for you to take the chains and the padlocks off the front door, I feel some difficulty from him being precluded to then take that information into court to then get an administrative search warrant to deal with what potentially is a significant health safety condition. And I just use padlocks and chains as an example, but there certainly could be many other things. We've gone into houses where you couldn't walk through the house without turning sideways because of the conditions in the structure. And if we're there doing some other inspection, let me first say, most people don't call us for property maintenance inspections. They don't call us to say, these are the conditions. These are things that we find either through complaints from neighbors, by visual observations of the property, by visual observations of the conditions. These are not, it is a rare occurrence where we have a property owner that says, come out and inspect my home for property maintenance conditions. That is certainly a rare circumstance. Now, we are certainly out on properties doing inspections as part of the other 12,000 permits we issue a year for electrical, plumbing, building, and other things. And we do use discretion in that. If the cover's missing on the electrical outlet, it's like, can you go to Ace Hardware, get a cover and a screw and take care of this so you don't have this exposed wiring. It is not, you have to vacate the house, here's 10-day notice type of thing. If we see significant health hazards, we need to be able to address them. And I don't want my inspectors to be hamstrung by, I was there to inspect a water heater, the 2 feet of standing sewage in the basement was something I couldn't deal with. I had to slog through to get to the water heater, but I couldn't write a violation on it.
Mayor?
I think the next one, yes, Mr.
Can I ask
Zerling?
Mrs. Rufield to read her proposed text again?
Yes, I have an answer to that, Mr. Steinbeck, and thank you so much. I'll read the first part, but I'll also read the second part, which I didn't read. The first part is the code official and his or her designated representative shall inspect any complaint by a tenant or request by a homeowner specific only to the actual written complaint request. The code official and his or her designated representatives will remain in the area of the home only where the complaint request is located while said inspection is conducted. This part I didn't read. Should the code official and his or her designated representatives find any public health or safety issues while in the area of current inspection other than the original complaint request, a report justifying an expansion of an inspection will be required to complete. A copy of said report will be forwarded to the Building Code Board of Appeals for review and approval or rejection, along with a notice to the homeowner that an expansion of an inspection is under consideration. Concurrently, a written notice outlining information regarding the appeal process will be mailed to the homeowner with a 31-day response window. A hearing with the Building Code Board of Appeals will not be scheduled until a response from the homeowner is received or the 31-day time limit has passed, whichever comes first. Now, what this has done, this has addressed the concern of health issues. If somebody is inspecting a water heater and they are standing in 2 inches of sewer, yes, this absolutely, that needs to be looked at. But rather than just move forward and do it, because while that's very obvious, there are some things that are not so obvious, and then the inspector may think that that is a safety or health issue, then a report can be issued that they want to expand their inspection, and the homeowner has the right to appeal that expansion in front of the Board of Appeals. The issue here is this. Bottom line, inspectors go into homes if there's been complaints via the tenant or another neighbor, and they inspect with a fine-tooth comb. They don't inspect just the complaint they inspect a lot of things. And if they want to do that and they believe that it is a health or a safety issue, they need to justify that before they move ahead and do it. You are in a person's home. And this would allow for that to take place. If there is a health or safety issue, then justify that you want to expand the inspection. Why is that so difficult? Because if there truly is a health or safety issue, you can expand the inspection through your justification of it, but not just go ahead and do it.
Want Mrs. Bloom to respond to that
Sure.
before I call on Mayor Pro Tem Howard? Yes.
Mayor, if I may, and I'm not sure that this will add clarification, but there are some Fourth Amendment restrictions, of course, that are governing. But I think also the issue here is that if the person is giving consent to go in, is that the situation that you're referring to, or are you referring, because if they don't give consent, then an administrative search warrant has to be sought to go in and to do the inspection. And that administrative search warrant is going to put restrictions on there, which again, it's another level of review that it's built into the current language. So I guess I'm not sure exactly where you're going, and also I would just indicate in reading it, I appreciate your reading it a couple of times. I would really, if there's a majority of council that wishes to proceed with that, then I would really like to have some time to analyze what the effect is of having that appeal going to the Building Code Board of Appeals. So,
Mayor, that's why I put this forward, but I've expressed a desire for a study session on this when it first came to us. I express it again. I don't think we should write stuff at the table. I'm not in favor of doing that. This was not something that staff could have handled because it is too, it would not be their decision to incorporate this in. This would be something that, as a body of 7 members, we would discuss at a study session. So we can move ahead, and we're taking up a lot of time, but I am more than willing to give some of this written material over to our city attorney and have a study session and talk about incorporating this, or we can just move ahead.
I need to call on Mayor Pro Tem Howard. He asked for the floor, and he has not had his opportunity. So.
Well, I appreciate it, Mayor. Actually, I'm okay. I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. The last time we had this item before us, we did indicate how we were going to handle it, and I thought that's what was going to occur. And I know that some council members met with staff and they worked on things that had the ability to change in here. You said you had some other items also?
Would you like to hear them? They're pretty quick. Section 104 again, under duties and powers of the code official. Under 104.2, rule making authority. The code official shall have authority as necessary in the interest of public health, safety, and general welfare to adopt and I can't read rules and procedures to interpret and implement the procedures of this code. I would like to amend that to the Troy City Council as the authority. Now, I understand we can't micromanage, but I think that the process should be brought for approval through the to the City Council. So the rule-making authority, I'm not comfortable with the code official having that authority. I think it should be the Troy City Council. Let me just run the 107.3 transfer of ownership. This section talks about if violations have been written, that the homeowner cannot sell that piece of property until those violations are corrected. And we all know that, well, if you've ever sold a home, you know that there's disclosure statements. So if there's something wrong with the home, you disclose that something is wrong with the home. I don't think that the city should have a say in the sale of property with disclosure of any violation and its pending ramifications. If I want to sell a home and you've violated me against, I don't know, a leaky faucet, I should still be able to sell the home with that leaky faucet. In the self-disclosure statement, I will say the home has a leaky faucet. That's in the closing packet when you sell a home. Let me ask you this, and I see some faces over there and I don't appreciate them. Let me ask you this. How in the world do you think that bank-owned foreclosed homes are being sold? And I understand we're trying to address this, but there's violation after violation after violation, but they're being sold in an as-is condition. Okay? We're not going in and violating them because we don't have that opportunity to do it. And I understand that Mr. Steinmeier is looking into this. But it's still being sold in an as-is condition, and when that homeowner buys it, they know that. Now what you're saying here is if I'm a homeowner and I have 2 or 3 violations against me on the house, I can't sell my house until I correct those violations. That's what this is reading, or at least that's what I'm understanding it to read. Transfer of ownership, 107.3.
Okay, I see Councilwoman Beltramini signaling, so I'm going to call on her and call on Mr. Steinmeier.
Well, it seems to me, and Mrs. Bloom and Mr. Steinmeier can correct me if I'm wrong, but the paragraph goes on to say, in the alternative, an owner can furnish the grantee, transferee, mortgagee, lessee a true copy of any notice of violation issued by the code official or his designee, or a copy of any court order. The owner shall then furnish to the code official a signed and notarized statement from the grantee, transferee, mortgagee, acknowledging the receipt of such notice, and the lessee, mortgagee fully accepts responsibility without condition for making the corrections or repairs required by such notice.
So when I'm looking at this, if I say the city should have no say in the sale of property with disclosure of any violation, its pending ramifications, the freedom to buy or sell should not be impeded by municipal decision. Any prior to sale violations should be handled privately between buyer and seller.
Madam Mayor?
Where are you reading that part?
No, that's her new language, I think. And
yes, it is.
That your new? I have a problem with that, and I'll tell you why. Because it never makes that building safe. And our job is to make sure that the buildings, our own and those next door to us, are safe. And that language says, maybe there's a violation, maybe there's not, it doesn't matter to me, it's okay. This says, we know there's a violation, we know it has to be corrected before we can move in, and that's okay with us. We'll buy this as is and we'll make the changes.
So the language then would allow for the buyer to understand that there's a violation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it's in the disclosure statement. When you purchase a house, you have to disclose the things that you know that are wrong with the house.
Yes.
So now we have the city involved.
Mr. Steinmeier?
Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to respond. The problem with the disclosure statement is the city isn't involved. If you don't disclose it, you're not responsible for anything to the city. The buyer can try and sue you for it, but it doesn't get the repairs done. What this basically requires is if we have posted your house, if we have inspected it and given you a list of repairs that are necessary for occupancy, we require that that list be transferred to the new owner so that they're aware of what their responsibilities are, that they don't do so blindly, that they don't buy it as is and find out that I'm 3 days away from getting a court order to have it demolished. Unfortunately, you may have read and seen articles in the paper of other communities where people have purchased a house only to find out that it's under a court order for demolition. Well, they bought it as is, there was no transfer of that information, and 3 days later the city shows up with a demolition contractor and demolishes the house. But the buyer, or excuse me, the seller never disclosed that information to the buyer.
Mayor?
Councilman Broomfield?
Would there not be a title search, Mr. Steinmeier, which is required unless you pay cash for something? Actually, I think it's required even that. And the title search would show that there's an order to demolish the house?
The court orders issued by the 52nd District Court don't automatically get recorded on the title to the property.
What I am trying to do, and I don't know if this is coming across or not, if I know something and I sell a house and I don't disclose it, I broke the law. okay? Self-disclosure statement is if I know about it, I need to put it down. If I've been violated by the city, I've got a dozen violations. As a seller, it's my responsibility to put that in the disclosure statement. What you're saying is people aren't going to do it, they're just going to lie. So the city then will step in and require that because there's so many people out there that are just going to lie. And I guess what I am attempting to do here, if it's not obvious, is to limit the involvement of the city in the private transactions and lives of our residents. When it's not necessary to be there, it's a wonderful safeguard. I get that. But there's 1 out of 100 that might not do that, that might lie. The other 99 are honest people. And if they have a list of violations, they're going to put them in there. We are assuming that they're not honest. Therefore, we're going to put something in place so that we can make sure that they're going to be honest. And it continues to go down this road. That's all I'm trying to promote here. If we don't change our thinking, and that's what I'm attempting to do, philosophy, basic philosophy, maintain your properties, be honest, be fair, put some safeguards out there, but make it hard on both ends, not just an open door policy to the city to walk in and they get one complaint so they inspect the whole place, which they're not justifying that it really is a health or safety issue. They're just deciding that they've got the day open, so let's just inspect everything. And I'm taking it to the extreme, but trust me, that happens. It happens too often. And if this thing is something we have to live with, that if an inspector goes into a home, let them prove that there is a safe or health issue, put it out there, and then it's justified, then we expand the inspection. But there's nothing in here to protect the person that owns the home. It's all one-sided. And as far as this other, if I want to sell my house, if I have violations, I will self-disclose that. If I need the city to twist my arm to do it, that's sad. And there may be a few out there that will have to do that. I understand that. But do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? Because that's what we're doing here.
Okay, Councilwoman Kerwin?
Well, again, this is not the leaky faucet ordinance. This is not the permit on the water heater ordinance. These are dangerous homes, unsanitary. Health, safety, and welfare is on the line for these. So this is the BOCA that's currently in effect. That's really what is out there. This supplies a need for our community in terms of safety. We're currently doing it. We've now had 60 days within which to respond. This was first issued 2 months ago for us to look at. I'm prepared to vote.
Further comments from council?
Yeah.
Councilman Eisenbacher?
On the same point, not to gloss over it, question for the attorney. How would we stop a transfer of property under the proposed language in the ordinance 107.3? Because the city is not invited to closings on houses.
Mrs. Bloom?
How would we stop it? Well, again, the language of 107.3 says it's unlawful for them to not disclose it, which again is mirroring, what some of the disclosure requirements under state law as well. Mm-hmm. What we can do, though, is if they have not complied with this and we're aware of it, there are possible injunctive remedies that could be pursued, and this would give a violation of this may give us an additional basis to pursue those injunctive remedies.
We don't track the houses that are for sale in the city of Troy, though, do we? That I'm aware of? So in terms of a practical mechanism, this could only be enforced after the fact, after a person has moved into the house. There's no way of preemptively saving someone from an illegal transfer.
Mr. Steinbeck wishes to respond. Mr. Steinbeck?
Yeah. No, we don't track the sales of property. We do track the violations, and I would say, with regard to the comment about the city getting involved with the sale of a property, the only time that this would apply is if we have been involved with the property prior to the sale. that we've already identified violations, that we have already posted the structure is unoccupiable, that we would get involved with this. If it is one of the 25,000 single-family residences within the city, a great majority of which exists without open violations, those sales can take place as the buyer and seller of the property exists. But when there are open violations on the property, we want to make sure that that new buyer of the property is aware of those conditions and aware of their requirements. Yes, state law under disclosure statement does require that be done. However, we have the city has no way to enforce that. We do have the ability to enforce the property maintenance code and the provisions of the property maintenance code that say that those violation notices need to be transferred. Second mortgages, other encumbrances, all those other things that you have to disclose, in that we're not interested in. What we're interested in is the open violations. And this would only apply if we have already cited those violations prior to the sale.
Okay, Councilman Fleming?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've had the privilege of spending several hours going over this with the assistance of our acting city manager, Mr. Zerlag, and assistance of Mr. Steinmack, and some assistance from Mr. Murphy. And I was looking at it more from the standpoint of an engineering type document procedure, not through the same eyes, I think, that Councilwoman Broomfield is sharing tonight. But I appreciate what she's saying here, and looking at this, I do have some concerns. I think what we're trying to do here tonight, as I think she stated in the beginning, trying to write this at the table is probably not the right way to do it, and it would have been better done in study session. I think we've made good progress, the changes we've made and the hours we spent on it. But having heard what she's saying tonight, I think there's some valid concerns, and I understand her concern and intent. And I would be in favor of putting this into a study session and wrapping this up and finalizing this language without voting on it tonight.
What's the majority of council feel? We do have a resolution on the table for allowing for the changes that were made previously, as we agreed to do. However, council always has the ability to amend when it comes to the council table. Do you wish to postpone this item to have a study session, or do you wish to have a vote on it?
Mayor? I'm just wondering if there are any other questions or concerns by any other council members, or is it just the things that I brought forward tonight?
It was my understanding that several council members met with staff and tried to work out some things prior to the meeting, because that's what we discussed the last time we were all together. That's my understanding. Councilman Eisenbacher?
Yes, I'm curious, did Councilwoman Broomfield have any other items? Or is that
She mentioned the four
the
items.
two.
She said, no, she mentioned
four. Okay,
Four.
4 items.
I do, but if anybody else has any to bring
Okay.
forward, I can bring these forward to study session or bring them forward tonight, but if anybody else has any more, I'm fine with hearing them now, or to justify whether we should do a study session or not.
Mayor, I have
yes,
items.
Councilman Eisenbacher, you do?
Yep.
I'm going to then call for a 10-minute break, and we're going to come back to this item. Okay, thank you. Okay, as we left this item, we have some amendments that have been suggested by Councilwoman Broomfield, and I understand that we have some amendments that are being suggested by Councilman Eisenbacher. It is my suggestion that both of those council members put those amendments in writing, get them to staff so that they can respond to them and so that all of council can see them. And then when this agenda item comes back to council, we will have that in writing. I don't know whether we need a study session to do that. I'm open to discussion on that. Councilman Fleming?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to suggest a study session. This is huge for us to go through. What I don't want to have is a repeat of what we had tonight and spend a lot of time, at this table trying to orchestrate the language. I really think history's shown that we work much better in a study session than we do, in a meeting like this. And that's what I would recommend. Study session. I think we can knock it out.
But would you like to see those changes in writing beforehand so you'd have a chance to read them and study them like we do usually with the agenda?
I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay.
And I would go along with that, but have that in the study session. Okay. And there may be other things that come up too, but at least that would be the beginning, certainly the beginning, and maybe all that we need to cover. I don't know. I would agree to do a study session only if we could have those items in writing so that we would have a chance to peruse them and have staff have a chance to take a look at for changes or comments to them beforehand. Do you want to move first? Mr. Zerline?
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of council. It was a lively discussion. I made 3 notes. One is that you're concerned with the precision of language. Secondly is that you want to correlate that language to health, safety, welfare issues. And thirdly is that the sum of those two have to strike a balance between the rights of a property owner against the community value of blight avoidance. And if we can get there doing that, whatever it takes, we'll try to achieve that.
Who else asked for the floor?
I just have a question of procedure. Are we saying that we would have a study session on the item and then bring it forward again at a regular scheduled meeting?
Well, we have to vote.
Yeah, you have to vote on it.
We have to have a vote on it. We can't vote on it at a study item.
That's my question. I'm just talking about weeks out. So we're talking about a posting for a study session and then posting at a subsequent meeting.
Correct. Our next, well, we won't have a timeline. We have a regular council meeting for July 20th, and then our next regular council meeting is August 3rd. This whole week, we have a meeting every single day. So it certainly won't be this week. The following week, Martin, you'll be gone. You'll be gone at least part of the time, Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Remember your sister's wedding.
Mayor?
And I'll be. Yes, Councilwoman Broomfield?
I'm wondering if a study session could be added on to one of our shorter agendas if anything's coming up, if our management could look at what we're looking at and then just put it on at the tail end, since most of us have reserved Mondays.
For the 20th? You're talking about Councilwoman Broomfield for the 20th of July?
Fine.
Okay, somebody want to move to postpone till July 20th?
Mayor,
Councilman Eisbacher?
I would like to go through my items real quick that I prepared for this meeting.
The only problem with that, Councilman Eisenbacher, is that when we had our meeting from 5 to 7, and that we agreed that this was going to be a short meeting, we have some very important items to tend to. I know you have items that you want to get out there, but you can give them to us in writing.
I have them prepared in writing right now, as a matter of fact, and I'd like to distribute them. And then I've got a statement I wrote out in preparation for this meeting, and I'd like to get through it real quick.
What's council's pleasure?
Mayor?
Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Harlech?
I honestly don't think he's spoken on the item at all, so I think it's fair.
Oh, at the last meeting you had all the questions for 2 hours.
Yep.
We spoke on the item at the last meeting, and you weren't here.
He certainly has the right to do it tonight.
I know. I'm just stating a fact.
Okay, so thank you for the floor, Mayor. And I do want to first off thank Mr. Stymack, Mr. Murphy, and our interim city manager, John Zerlike, for meeting with myself and Wade 2 times. We went through and answered all my questions and items of concern. Did want to start off by stating an opinion. And in my opinion, I've picked out 7 items in this code that I think at least 99% of the houses in Troy violate at least one of them. And with the code as it's written currently, I think that 100% compliance with the code as strictly written will be the exception rather than the norm, contrary to what's been stated tonight. First one I have is section 302.5, rodent harborage. All structures and exterior property shall be kept free from rodent harborage and infestation. This is obvious, but Ohio State University, I found in further research, Critter Pest Management Site, of course I didn't find a Michigan one, but Ohio State University Management's Critter Pest Management Site I visited said that 10 chipmunks or more per area is considered an infestation population. So that means if you have an 1/8 acre subdivision lot, if you have more than 2 chipmunks, by a university statement of infestation, it'd be illegal. Section 304.2, protective treatment. Exterior wood surfaces other than decay-resistant woods shall be protected from the elements and decay by painting or other protective coating or treatment. Peeling, flaking, and chip paint shall be eliminated and surfaces repainted. That makes sense if it's the whole structure and you got major peeling, like what we had at our museum with the buildings that the paint just wouldn't stick. But the reasonableness is left up to the code enforcement officer. Section 304. That's number 2. Number 3. This is my top 7. Section 304.7, roofs and drainage. Roofs, drains, gutters, and downspouts shall be maintained in good repair and free from obstructions. This is a good one for spouses to make sure the other spouse is maintaining their property. I'm actually in violation of this one right now with one of my downspouts. Section 304.13.2, openable windows. Every window, other than a fixed window, shall be easily openable and capable of being held in position by window hardware. Another one for spouses. You got a stuck window, it's now illegal. Section 403.2, bathrooms and toilet rooms. Air exhausted by a mechanical ventilation system from a bathroom or toilet room shall just discharge to the outdoors and shall not be recirculated. Most of the homes built in the 70s and 80s that have upstairs bedrooms they're vented into the attic. They're not vented outdoor. Going into the attic, extending your vent, and putting it to the outside of the building is a pretty substantial project. And I see that this is being the exception for the vast majority of the houses in Troy, and this will be a violation. Number 6, section 702.3, locked doors. All means of egress doors shall be readily openable from the side from which egress is to be made without the need for keys, special knowledge, or effort, except where the door hardware conforms to that permitted by the Michigan Building Code. All of you have seen double-keyed locks. In speaking with Mr. Stymack, that has been illegal for a long time. This is something that, if we are serious about enforcement, this is an item that needs to be communicated, because I've seen a lot of houses where they have a glass door, and instead of having an open lock where you can just punch open the glass and reach in and unlock it, they put a double lock on there. And finally, number 7, section 504.1, general plumbing. All plumbing fixtures shall be properly installed and maintained in working order and shall be kept free from obstructions, leaks, and defects, and be capable of performing the function for which such plumbing fixture is designed. Thus, another one for the spouses. If you got a leaking faucet, it's now it will be codified in the city as being illegal, and you could call the property maintenance code call the property inspectors if the problem is bad enough with your spouse. So when they're a big problem, obviously we need to deal with it, as what was brought up by council members this evening. But with the strict interpretation of sections of this code, it's very hard for any homeowner to be in 100% compliance. I also provided a list of the items that I have disagreements with the staff recommendations and I would like to see changed. And obviously this, I believe there were enough copies passed around that it will be part of our study session. Thank you.
Anyone else have items that they want to bring forward? Then could we have do we have a resolution for a postponement?
Mayor, I would put forward a resolution to postpone this item until July 20th. And during that time, there will be a scheduled study session.
Mayor, before you move
I'm sorry.
on.
Yes, Ms. Bartholomew?
That resolution needs to be tweaked just a bit. If it's postponed until the 20th and the study session is the 20th, the action will actually occur at a later meeting. So
Right.
we're sitting now on action, so we're going to have to make a different motion of postponement. We can make a postponement for discussion to occur on the 20th with action to follow at the next regular meeting or after the study session. But it will not work as well.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
what is our
Councilmember
next
Griffin?
date after the 20th? I don't have a calendar in
August,
front of me.
it's at the end of the agenda.
August 6th?
August 3rd.
3rd. Okay, I didn't get a second, so I would reword that to postpone this item for action until August 3rd at the regular scheduled city council meeting, and on July 20th, a study session be scheduled.
Support.
Mr. Zerlag, and I see Mr. Steinmeier standing at the mic too.
My apologies, but I need to find out primarily if Mr. Steinmeier is going to be on vacation during any of those days.
Mr. Steinmeier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's something I rarely do, but I am going to be out of town on the 20th. Something to do with Scouts and 100th anniversary and a bus trip across the country. So it's something I can't get out of because there's a few other people that are depending on me being there. But I could make I will be back in town for the meeting on the 3rd.
What days are you gone, Mark?
I'm gone from the 20th until the 31st.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
I'd like to amend my motion to postpone this item until the August, what is the 3rd? August 17th date for action, and a study session to be scheduled at August 3rd.
Did you have a second to that?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Broomfield, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we postpone action on this item until August 20th and have a study session on the item on August 3rd. I'm assuming that if this passes, that those folks that have things that they, amendments or changes, will get them in writing so that we can have staff reaction and council a chance to study them before those dates. Councilman Kerwin?
And that calendars can be cleared. I know those are regular meeting nights, but the calendars can be cleared so that we will have council members present and not need to postpone again.
Further discussion of the motion? The vote on the postponement and the setting of the study session? Yes, Mrs.
Actually, there's two postponement. One's an amendment of the first one, so this is to amend the motion to postpone.
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now the second one?
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling.
Yes. Motion passes. That concludes that item. We're going to public comment, items not included in the agenda, and I'll call on our County Commissioner, Tim Burns, and then there are two others that signed up for this item.
Excuse me to be casual. I was visiting with my two little kids before the meeting and popped in to make a few announcements just because they are time sensitive, and I know you have other things going on this evening, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I did want to note, first of all, that the Oakland County Fair is starting tomorrow, and that's at Springfield Oaks County Park. If you want more information about the events and the schedules and how to get to the park, you can go to my website, which is timothyburns.org, and we have information and links that can get you all the information you need, and encourage you to go up and check out the 4-H exhibits, and we have the Crash Up Derby, and they have the carnival rides, and it's a fun time. But what's more of an urgent issue that I wanted to bring up is that being at the meeting tonight, and as you know, I often come to sit in and witness the goings-on of our local government, and from my past experience on Planning Commission and with the City Council, I'm used to citizen bodies operating in the evenings to let the representatives have the chance to have their careers and fulfill public service at night, and for the residents to come out and see and hear what's going on and express their opinions. And as many people are aware, the Oakland County Board of Commissioners meets in the mornings. They meet right now every other Thursday morning up in Pontiac. And for a while I've said, why don't we at least try moving some meetings to the evenings and see how that reacts to the way we interact with our staff and public turnout. And I've lost a couple votes on that, but I'm pleased to announce that this year one of the resolutions that I sponsored on that matter has passed. And we're going to have a compromise where we're going to study night meetings for a little while and see how that works out. And the first night meeting is July 15th. So next Wednesday, July 15th, up at the Board of Commissioners Auditorium in the 1200 North Telegraph Building, which is where the Circuit Court is as well, up in Pontiac, we're going to be having our full Board of Commissioners meeting. And I'd like to encourage people to come out and sit in and see what's going on. And that should be interesting. Additional evening meetings are going to be August 12th, September 2nd, October 14th, and December 9th. And then at the end of the year, we're going to review and take a look at how well they went, and if we think it merits moving the meetings full-time to the evenings or going back to having them on the Thursday mornings like they've been for about a decade or more now. So I'm proud I've been working on that. That's a promise I made to constituents that I would try to do, and we're working in the right direction. In that regard, too, you're going to be seeing some headlines in the news and hearing some things around town about program cuts by the county. So I wanted to give you just a brief update, and maybe that's a reason you're going to want to start coming to some of these night meetings so you can hear a little bit for yourself of what's going on. The good news is compared to Wayne County, which is going to have to make some drastic personnel cuts that could potentially affect core services, in Macomb County, which has had to raise taxes to preserve some core services, Oakland County's not in that bad of a situation. We're blessed with an educated population, good workforce, good property values, and we haven't seen the declines that the other counties have faced. But we have seen some significant revenue declines based on the declining property values in the area. And we are going to have to make some changes because this year we're going to have to cut $50 million from the budget. And out of a $1 billion budget, that may not seem a lot, but think about it. $50 million isn't something where you can just click your fingers and the problem's taken away. So you're going to hear some issues about things like the drug courts and the boot camp, and a lot of programs that have some good merit to them that we may have to put on hold for a while until things get better or evaluate the worthiness for the long term, just because we can't afford to pay for everything that we don't have the money to spend on. And one of the pledges I've made, and something I'm going to stick to, is that like all of us, as bills come up, you can't necessarily just find money to pay your bills that's not there. And so we need to be responsible as government too. So we're not just going to raise your taxes to kind of fix the holes. We're going to live within our means. But we're also going to make sure that we keep those core services, such as the people who go out and inspect the restaurants and the pools and the sheriff's deputies that are out there, making sure that we're safe. Right now, no one has to worry about it, but you are going to see some of the conveniences that we're used to might have to at least be put on hold for a little while. So I encourage you to stay in touch. If you hear of something that concerns you, though, let me know. My phone number is 248-275-1826. Again, my website is timothyburns.org, and I'm open to thoughts. We've got about 2 months to make these difficult choices, but they'll be done. Things will be going well. We'll be run smoothly at the county next year as we look into seeing what we have to do to adjust as the times change. But again, we're in good situations. We do have to make some significant cuts, but it's not going to affect core services, and your taxes are not going to be raised due to the current economic conditions. And thanks for your time, and I'll let you get back to business.
Thank you. Cynthia Wilshire. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm so glad to see everybody here tonight. There's been some talk about absences on the Charter Revision Committee, and I'm here to address those. As a member of the Charter Revision Committee for 20 plus years, I'd like to relay a little bit of history to you. Previously, members took their appointments very seriously. It was an honor to be appointed to this group, and we all had to have some kind of background to even fit into this group, to even be nominated for these positions. In the last few years, politics and appointments came into the picture. The appointments have been used to further people's running for office, either locally or other levels in the state. They were also given to persons with a special agenda, a one issue. We had a couple that were there for one issue. They didn't get their own way. They left. We know that council really didn't care what the citizens on the committee had to contribute to the mix, because our submitted opinions were pushed aside without much discussion by the council, and they proceeded with their own agendas and plans for what they wanted to do with the charter. A majority of 4 on this council rules, and they quickly ran over any opinions we had and just kind of went on, barely giving a thought to our comments. Some of the items on the ballots were worded so that a no vote meant yes. Some were so confusing that citizens didn't know what was going on. The language went through the city attorney's office for the legal writing, but we felt it was steered towards the opinion that the council wanted to come up on the outcome of the vote, reflecting their views. Sometimes we had 7 or 8 items on the ballot that further confused citizens. We only hoped that they would pass. A lot of times they all didn't pass. During a lot of this, we did not meet on a regular scheduled basis. We were called in to decide these things at the last minute because it was close to having to get it on the ballot. And we had to do things in a big hurry without much thought. Big changes that have occurred in the recent years were, number 1, we went from being a board to a committee. Everyone knows a board has much more status than being on a committee. It was not a name change. It was a status of importance change that we felt was given to our group. Our meetings were no longer recorded. Citizens and council could not see the process of us getting to our opinions. They just got a couple of sentences that reflected what the issues were. Our meetings were changed from once a month, scheduled at 7 o'clock at night, to meetings that were 1 or 2 weeks' notice at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This was done, as we were told, was for the convenience of the staff. This is what has created a lot of absences. We have working people on our committee. One is an attorney, one is a college professor. They just can't say, oh, sorry, Judge, I got to be at a Charter Revision Board meeting, and trip out the door. When meetings were regularly scheduled, everyone made every effort, and if you look back at the attendance, we had excellent attendance. We could schedule our vacations around it, and in fact, one time this past year, one of our members had to drive down from Traverse City for a 1-hour meeting so that we would have enough to conduct the meeting. Some of us also have family care obligations, taking care of grandchildren or parents, and we can't just call in somebody else because generally there is no one else. And this only gives us, meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, approximately 1 hour to make up our minds on whatever's brought before us. No second chance because it's so close, we can't schedule another meeting. We've always prided ourselves on our attendance record and never had a problem until these changes occurred. Unfortunately, politics has come to Troy. The council in the last few years is running our city like other representatives are running our county, state, and our country. On their own agenda, not listening to what anybody is saying, just going ahead with your own private agendas. It's time to get back to the old way of running our city, the way the citizens want things done. A lot of people have given up. They've gotten to the point where they won't even vote because they feel nobody is listening. We seem to just get more and more the same. We need to start at the grassroots again and not with personal agendas. A few suggestions to get back on track. Number one, the Charter Revision Committee needs to be scheduled in the evening so that all members can be there, as well as any citizens who are interested in what's going on can be there without taking off time from work. The various committees, not only ours, should be televised on our Troy TV channel. That way, people that are interested, just like in watching the council meeting, can find out what's going on with all the various committees. And it's not the big committees that they're worried about. It's the little ones, the everyday workings of the little committees. This can make a big difference. Hopefully, by doing this, the council wouldn't be threatened because we'd have too much information. And number three, people should be appointed. They should have some kind of background, some kind of interview to get on some of these committees. You may want to get on a committee, but you may not have the qualities that that committee needs from you. Just like applying for a job. We feel that the Charter Revision Committee is very, very important to the city. The candidates we've had, some of them have absolutely no idea of the process that we use to come to a consensus. We've had to sit down and explain this to people. They've never even been to a meeting to see what we do, and they're appointed to the committee. Some of it is very disrupting behavior or pushing their point of view to the point that they will not compromise and they can't see the forest for the trees. Some haven't got a clue even what we're even talking about at some points. And there have been insults and resignations because of misunderstandings like this. In this kind of a situation, everybody loses. I watch the council meetings on a regular basis and encourage my friends and my family to do so. I keep telling them, it's going to be a real eye-opener. They always come to me and ask me what's going on because I always seem to know what's going on. Because the Charter Revision Committee was to be involved in this particular meeting, or we're having an appointment, I watched your June 15th meeting, study session, 3 times to make sure that I was getting information that I needed to make some kind of an intelligent decision and get background for our upcoming revisions. I noticed some of you find it a big inconvenience to accomplish what you want to do. but others showed real concern for the rights of us as Troy citizens. The discussion of the items of concern were discussed between 11 o'clock and 11:50, which was 50 minutes. We were sent an agenda for a July 13th meeting. It was mailed June 25th. That gives us 17 days, not including our past holiday weekend, to find information and come up with what we decide we'd like to put forward in the committee. We were given a one-sentence consensus of what the council members, minus two, had discussed in the study session. We will have maybe a little more than an hour to discuss and make a decision on what to bring forward to you, what our concerns will be. And again, if the other members on our committee have not watched the study session, they're not going to know what your feelings are on these. So we may come up with some bad information, wrong information, or no information at all to try and make a very important decision on what goes on the ballot. We don't want to inconvenience the staff. This is a running joke with us. Everybody else can be put out of their way or not be able to show up for things. The only meetings that I have missed, I think, have been 3 since this 3 o'clock appointment thing has gone into effect. It's very obvious, like you need a study session for these things that you're concentrating on and doing them right and well. We need a study session. We need to have more than 1 hour to make very important decisions as to what we feel and how we feel about putting things on the ballot for people to have to make decisions on, and being out in the community, being able to explain them to people what exactly the process is. So I'd appreciate it if you will just take my 3 suggestions and think about them. I think it can be a positive difference, and it will allow us to help you and you to help us do the right thing for all the citizens of Troy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilshire. Richard Peters, you just sat down. Yes, come up. It's your turn. Good evening.
I got a tax. We got taxes in the mail today, and usually I'm not one of these guys who really wants to. Government. You got to have government, and I think taxes are a thing to pay. But my property was assessed, or our property was assessed at.
Mr. Peters, before you start with personal information, did you contact the assessing department already?
The question I want to ask, though,
okay,
is that this law, from what I understand, is a percentage law, and it works kind of like on volume. My house is 60 years, or my father was 60 years old. It's assessed at $160,000, and I don't think I could sell that house for $50,000. I have to wonder. I know that times are, we all know that. But I think that's a bit much, to be honest about it, and I'm just wondering how they came up with that formula.
Did you come in or talk to the assessing department about it?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
After you got that?
And I got 2 different, so one, I talked to Mary Ann, and then I talked to Kim a little bit. Okay. And I kind of didn't get where I was wanting to. In a sense, I did, but I didn't. So But
those are the people that you really should deal with on your assessment, not the city council.
Right.
Okay?
Well, I just want to know how that law was incorporated, or what was it, that law that, was that, now I know the state, but I don't know what the city, see, I thought that they should go like the fair market value of I think that's how they used to do it, and now I guess they use this percentage, like if you're in an area, and they, by comparable, I think that's how they assess it now. And I was wondering how that, when that was incorporated and how not.
Okay. Mr. Lamarato, do you wish to speak to Mr. Peters? Mr. Peters, some of your information is personal, your information, so it shouldn't be, public here. But Mr. Lamarato will be happy to talk with you. He just indicated he would. Thank you, Mr. Lamarato. Is there anyone else that we missed on items that are not on the agenda? I know we have some folks waiting on other items that are in our agenda, so we'll go forward as quickly as we can here. E1 is appointments to boards and committees. We had our city council appointments last time. We nominated the students, all the students here to come forward.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Howard.
I will move the resolution as printed with all of the names as noted on the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Howard, seconded by Councilwoman Broomfield, that we appoint all of the students to the boards and committees as listed in the agenda without reading all the names here. Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Motion passes. On the nominations, I forward the name of Adrian Milner as the student to the one-year term of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew, on Adrian Milner?
Councilmember Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Motion passes. City Council nominations, Mayor Pro Tem Howard.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I have all the names here. Ethnic Issues Advisory Board is Lily Wang and David Guo. Library Advisory Board is Paul Lee. Troy Days Committee, I believe, is a reappointment of Sarah Wunderlich.
Just a second. And don't forget, we have the school board representative. There was an email today. Mrs. Bartholomew, would you tell us again? There were two names that were mentioned in a separate email for boards and committees today. Lindsay?
The information that was provided was the attendance on the two people that are up for reappointment. And it's just their attendance at their meetings for the past term.
Okay. That was on Gary Huff for the school board and Kevin Lindsay for Historical Commission.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Councilwoman Kerwin?
I would move the forwarding of Kevin Lindsay to Historical Commission.
And what about for the to the Parks and Rec Board? Do we have information on that? Councilman Fleming?
I would move Gary Hoff as the school board representative for Parks and Rec. I see the note here that Troy School District notified regarding recommendation. And it's my
No, we
understanding.
didn't get a notification, that's why I'm inquiring.
Get any feedback at all?
No. Is that why you were hesitating putting a name forward? Okay, so we need to inquire about that?
Okay.
Okay.
The district
We'll
was
do it next
notified.
time.
They didn't notify us.
Okay.
Okay. We'll wait on that one.
Okay.
And Madam Mayor, they meet tomorrow for the organizational meeting. It would still be after the president's elected and makes the appointment, so
Okay.
we'll just have to wait.
All right. Okay, so we have the names that were forwarded by Mayor Pro Tem Howard. We didn't need a second?
Additionally, there are two students for Troy Days Sarah Wonderlich.
I read that one.
That was done.
Yes, we did Sarah.
Did I miss one?
What about Alice Lang?
Yes, thank you.
Alice Lang? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Howard, seconded by Councilman Eisenbacher, that we forward the names for Ethnic Issues Advisory Board, Lily Hung as a student member, and David Gao, and Historic District Commission, did you say Emily Wang? Here. And Kevin Lindsay for the Historical Commission reappointment, and Paul Lee for the Library Advisory Board, and Troy Days Committee, Sarah Wunderlich and Alice Lang. Correct? Discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltramini?
did we renominate Emily Wang to the Historic District Commission?
I didn't have that one circled. Did you want to do her again to?
Because it doesn't say she wants reappointment or anything like that, and I
Okay.
didn't hear Mayor Pro Tem Howard.
Okay, I may have circled it incorrectly. You did not do Emily Wang?
No.
Okay, all right.
And we have not heard from her yet.
Okay, all right. So excluding the name Emily Wang, the rest of the names? Okay.
Councilmember Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilor Beltramini,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Motion passes. E3, the Road Commission for Oakland County resolution supporting bills proposed by the bipartisan members of the Transportation Funding Task Force.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I would move the resolution as presented.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin. Discussion?
Mayor,
Councilman Eisenbacher?
I was very disappointed in reading the supporting information and then the report from this Transportation Funding Task Force that they didn't address the construction process that we use in Michigan that leads to roads that are lasting substantially less than their design life for a variety of reasons. I think that no matter how much money we have, we can't afford to have 30 to 40 year roads failing in 10 to 15 years. And that's my only point.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Yeah, I wouldn't even consider a tax increase until they get rid of road commissions, because I think the road commissions, with their quasi-independence, have a tendency to throw a tremendous amount of money away on the administration and are unbelievably inefficient and unresponsive to the needs of residents. And this is a tax increase on top of the cap and trade, which is estimated to add additional $1 a gallon for domestic gasoline, or 90 cents a gallon for imported gasoline. And on top of the fact that we're living in a severe recession with an unemployment rate in the state approaching 15%, this is the wrong time to be putting forward this proposal. And at the very least, I would suggest waiting 2 years.
Further discussion? Okay, the vote on Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Howard,
No.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Broomfield,
No.
Eisenbacher,
No.
Fleming,
No.
Motion fails. Correct?
That's right.
E4 is the Standard Purchasing Resolution Best Value Award Interpretive Master Plan for the Troy Museum and Historic Village. Do we have a resolution?
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltramini?
resolved that the Troy City Council hereby awards a contract to develop an interpretive master plan for the Troy Museum and Historic Village to the highest bidder, the 106 Group Limited of St. Paul, Minnesota, as a result of a best value process for an estimated total cost of $20,000, and be it further resolved that the award is contingent upon the consultant's submission of properly executed proposal and contract documents, including insurance certificates and all other specified requirements.
Second.
Madam Mayor?
Moved by Councilman Beltramini. Who was the second? Councilwoman Broomfield. That we approve the resolution. Councilwoman Kerwin?
I think I may have misheard that, but it reads highest rated bidder, just as a clarification.
Further discussion? Vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilman Kerwin?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlett?
Yes.
Motion passes. Contract extension for the OEM golf and turf replacement equipment parts.
Mayor,
Councilman Eisenbacher?
I'll move the resolution as printed.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Eisenbacher, seconded by Councilwoman Broomfield. That we approve the resolution as printed. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howlett?
Just a clarification from management. It's my understanding that this was a 3-year contract approved in 2005 with a 1-year extension, and that 1-year extension was exercised on May 12, 2008. Is that correct?
Who has that? Mr. Zerlike, do you? Oh, you want me to call on Mrs. Anderson? Mrs. Anderson?
That is correct.
I can't.
Sorry, that is
I don't
correct.
think it's on. I think Mark Steinbeck turned it off. Is it?
That is correct. You hear me?
Go ahead.
My only request for staff is when we're going to waive the formal bid procedures in the future, if we could have a paragraph in there so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with, I think it's either the code or the charter. We have to specifically state that that it's in the best interest of the city to waive this process. Because they're both very specific about what we need to do with our bid procedures, and it's highly restrictive in going through this process. And I think you did a very good job with a memo explaining to us, but I just want to make sure that we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted.
Point is well taken. Thank you.
Further discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlett?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Motion passes. E6, donation of the historic barn by George Spencer, and it has to be withdrawn. I was just reading the item till it's ready to come forward, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. E7 is on the yellow item here. It's the contract ratification with Troy Police Officers Association and the City of Troy.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Beltramini.
Resolved that a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Troy and Troy Police Officers Association for the period July 1, 2008 through June 30th, 2013 is hereby ratified by the City Council of the City of Troy, and the Mayor and City Clerk are authorized to execute the final agreement.
Support.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we approve the resolution as read. Discussion? I would like to make a comment that I appreciate everyone that was involved in the interest-based bargaining process, and that the contract for the 5-year period, I think, will help us with consistency and security on both sides with this. It was well thought out, and I think the documentation that is provided shows that. So I appreciate everyone that was involved with it. I'm sure that all council members feel the same too. Okay, further discussion? The vote then, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlett?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. Motion passes. And E8 is the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office OWI forfeiture program. Now I know why she's here. I was asking her earlier. Well, you don't need to, do you want to speak on the item? You don't need to. You thought when I pointed at you, you had to come up. Unless we have questions, then, okay. Does someone want to move the resolution?
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Beltramini.
resolved that the City Council of the City of Troy does hereby approve the Troy Police Department's implementation of the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office Operating While Intoxicated OWI forfeiture program.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Fleming, that we approve the resolution as printed. Discussion?
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Howard.
There's something here that I'm missing. So if somebody could perhaps just give me could I just request a brief overview to make sure I'm on the same page and understand exactly what's going on?
Chief Mayor will be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I think he's going to request assistance here. Would you like to come up to this mic? Because it's so much easier to hear up here. Please? Thank you.
Mayor, I'm prepared to answer any questions, but I did bring counsel with me for this legal counsel. I don't want everybody to think anything of that I'm traveling with legal counsel at this point. But she can give a much more articulate explanation of the program if that'll suffice.
Thanks.
And I think you better introduce her.
This is Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Kim Mitzvah. Sorry, from the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. She's from the Economic Recovery Unit.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening,
Good
Madam Mayor
evening.
and members of the council.
The mic is on this side. Yes. That one.
I am, in fact, with the Economic Recovery Section in the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If I may.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Howard had some questions, or?
I guess the only part I'm a little confused about is this is called forfeiture, but it looks like a fine.
It is not a fine, sir. It's a forfeiture. It's like any other forfeiture provision. It's a civil aspect to a criminal case. It's a parallel proceeding. When you read the statute, it indicates at the conclusion of the criminal matter, there is a hearing, which is a civil proceeding. It is not a fine or a penalty. In fact, its primary purpose is that of a deterrent. And I don't know if anyone noticed over the weekend, some of the public service announcements started running saying you can't afford drunk driving, you can't afford an OWI. This is a deterrent measure, the primary focus of which is hopefully to inform people and let them know that they just cannot drink and drive.
Okay, so this is basically taking the vehicle that they're driving, is that correct?
That's correct, if they are in fact an owner, co-owner, or lessor of the vehicle.
Okay, so if it's stolen, it wouldn't be.
That's correct, or if you're driving an innocent third party's vehicle, if you lent your vehicle to a neighbor and they happen to drink and drive, your car would not be forfeit.
Okay, now there's a reference here to $900 to the first, and and second, and $1,800 to the third. What is this?
When each case comes, every case that comes in is reviewed for a number of items, but primarily the first review is to see if the car will even be eligible for a partial forfeiture, and I'll explain that. Initially, it's reviewed for a full forfeiture. If the defendant driver, say, has multiple convictions, or they're traveling with minor children in the vehicle, they cause an accident causing serious bodily injury or death, chances are very good that we at the prosecutor's office will seek full forfeiture of that vehicle. If, in fact, it is a situation where the driver has basically a very clean criminal history, a clean driving record, a lower blood alcohol level, there are no children or other aggravating factors, if it's a second offense, it is a flat rate of $900 for the forfeiture. If it is a third offense, it is $1,800.
And that's on top of the automobile?
That is for the release of the vehicle, if in fact it's subject to release. We seek full forfeiture of many vehicles as well.
It seems to me that, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I've always wondered this. Why is it that that, you know, you could read an article in the paper and someone's been arrested, it seems like a gazillion times for driving while intoxicated, and they're still driving, or, you know, it seems like they get like 8 slaps on their wrist. It seems to me that is this really going to be a deterrent?
Actually, Wayne County has been implementing or using this program for almost 8 years. Macomb has for 5 years. And I would think it does have some deterrent value. Anywhere in the state, there are ways to purchase a vehicle illegally or put it in someone else's name. There are some number of individuals that no matter what we do, they're going to continue to drink and drive. But for some number of people, and even if it's one person, if you can stop them or prevent them from causing the risk and dangers to our citizens from driving drunk, then the program is effective in my mind.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor?
Any other, I think Councilman Broomfield and Councilman Beltrino. Councilman Broomfield.
Thank you for being with us this evening. Sorry it's so late.
That's good.
A quick question. I think I'm understanding this right, but the forfeiture is basically the car is taken, the vehicle is taken. In order to get the vehicle back, it's the $900 or the $1,800 after review. It's not that you keep the vehicles, plus the monies.
Correct, except that there are cases in which we will seek full forfeiture upon conviction in a criminal matter.
So full forfeiture would mean they do not get their car back?
That's correct. That's right.
And what happens to these vehicles?
The vehicles are sold much like a narcotic seizure, where they're sold at public auction, and the cost of sale is deducted from the proceeds, the court costs, administrative costs, and the proceeds remaining, if any, would go to the police department. That being said, sometimes these vehicles, there is no cash benefit to the forfeiture whatsoever. We turn it back to the leasing company. We return it to the lien holder. The purpose is to get that person off the road.
So they have both the monies owed, the $900 or the $1,800, plus potentially lose their car altogether.
No, ma'am. If they lose their car altogether, there is no forfeiture fine amount. There's no $900, no $1,800.
Okay. All right, got it.
Mayor?
Other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Actually, my concern is this. If the intent is to get them off the road, then why not sell the vehicle and give them their money back? Or if the intent is to obtain the cash, then why not impose a fine? That's where my confusion is.
I didn't write the statute, but my understanding is that if we give them the money back or just return the vehicle to those people who have proven themselves to be dangerous, they're just going to continue until they are stopped in some form or fashion. If we make it a situation in which they cannot obtain the release of that vehicle, then clearly it's much more difficult for them to get back on the road in an altered condition the next day or in the near future.
Further questions? Thank you. We appreciate you being with us this evening. We have a resolution on the table. The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor?
Beg your pardon, Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
I just want to make a comment. And
yes.
Anybody who knows me knows that I have great disdain for folks who drive under the influence of alcohol, or for that matter, anything other than their own sanity. My concern with this, and I'm not completely sold on this, is that I think it's a misdirected policy. My perspective, and I guess what I was alluding to before, is I thought that people who are, I just can't understand how we can let people who drive under the influence of alcohol off so easily. And I don't think that this is solving that. I also don't think it's solving the societal drawbacks that exist with intoxicated drivers. And anybody who knows me also will know that I have a great concern for anything that's a forfeiture. Because again, I don't think that it meets the policy directive. And the policy directive is to rehabilitate people, to make them productive members of society, and hopefully they won't repeat their past mistakes. A lot of this, I personally think, is probably habitual. And I will admit also that it's probably a good thing to get them away from an automobile. but anyway, so I'm torn. I'm not sold on it, so I can't support this.
Any further comments? Vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Broomfield,
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
No.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you for your time. The consent agenda, does anyone have any items they wish to have exempted?
F4?
Pardon?
No. F4?
F4.
Isn't that the Boys and Girls Club contract?
Any others?
That would be F5.
Oh, I'm
Pardon?
sorry, F5, not F4.
F5.
F6?
F6.
F4B.
F4B. Any others? Could we have a resolution then exempting those three?
Mayor?
Councilman Eisenbacher?
Resolved that all items as presented on the consent agenda are hereby approved as presented with the exception of items F5, F4B, F6, which shall be considered after consent agenda F items as printed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Eisenbacher, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we approve all the consent agenda items except F4B, F5, and F6 that'll be considered after the vote of these items. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Broomfield.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll take them in the order of the agenda. F4B, Mayor Pro Tem Howard, I think that was yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick inquiry. I was curious as to the rotation period. So, for example, these units that we're purchasing are replacing units that are how old?
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Anderson?
There's a rotating schedule for all equipment at the golf courses. The Banks mower that is being replaced is, I believe, 9 years old. The fairway mower, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how old that one is. The blower is a new piece of equipment, and the utility vehicles are in excess of 7 or 8 years old.
Very good. Thank you.
Do you want to move that item?
Sure. I will move Resolution F4B as printed on the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Howard, seconded by Councilwoman Broomfield, that we approve item F4B. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Broomfield,
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Motion passes. F5,
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I'll be abstaining from this. This is a contract with the Boys and Girls Club. I do work for the Boys and Girls Club, however, I do not obtain any monies from this contract. So if you excuse me, I'd like to abstain.
Someone want to move F5?
Mayor?
Councilman Eisenbacher?
We don't have a provision for abstain. We have to recuse, yeah, for our charter.
Oh, that's right. So we need a motion to excuse,
Yeah, I'd make the motion in the proper charter language.
Mrs.
to
Bartholomew, how do we say this?
Recuse due to financial conflict of interest.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Eisenbacher, seconded by Councilwoman Broomfield, that we recuse Councilwoman Kerwin from voting on item F5 due to potential financial conflict of interest. Discussion? The vote on that, and then we'll vote on the item.
Councilmember Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
You
You get to
get to vote on recusing yourself. You say yes?
Well, I have a question for the attorney because of the phrasing of that, because of a potential conflict of interest.
Mrs. Bloom?
The charter says that in order to be recused, that there should be, the only times that it's permissible to be excused from a vote are when there's a financial interest. So I think you have a financial interest in the entity would be an appropriate phrasing of that, if that's something that is
Because
more
I have no
comfortable.
financial interest whatsoever in this contract.
So then you don't need to be excused, you can vote on it.
You're
If she
paid
doesn't
by
have a financial interest, Mrs. Bloom, she can vote on this item, correct? Mrs. Bloom?
First of all, I'm glad for the disclosure. I think it's very important that there is disclosure. The charter provision. A contract in which an officer or member of the family has a pecuniary interest. So that is the language of the charter. And it could be considered that you have a pecuniary interest in the success of the organization. Not necessarily in this particular contract. I understand that the money is going towards the social worker in this particular case. However, it is possible that the monies, if not received by the city, would go to
Other licensed
may affect
counselors.
it may affect your position. It's possible.
May we consider clarifying language then, that would simply say, I work for the Boys and Girls Club, and not that I would be subject to already in it, voting. Have to vote against it. I'm asking a question.
You're asking Mrs. Bloom?
Well, I believe the resolution as declared was that I have a financial interest in this contract.
Potential financial interest. Would you read the resolution, Mrs. Bartholomew?
At this time, I can't read it. We have to go off the tape. It was not typed. So, I can't word for word.
Vote
Okay.
it down or do it.
We withdraw that one and have another one brought forward?
No, at this point in time, you are in the middle of that vote, so you need to continue on with the vote. It would be recommended, since you're unsure, is to fail the motion and make another one in its place.
No, I'll vote no.
Pardon?
Then my vote is no.
Okay.
Mayor Schilling?
No.
Councilmember Beltramini? No. Councilmember Broomfield?
No.
Eisenbacher?
No.
Fleming?
No.
Motion fails. Do we need another resolution?
Just put forward.
I'd like to make the resolution with the correct language this time.
That Councilwoman Kerwin be
Councilwoman.
excused
Due to her
because she
pecuniary.
is employed by the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
I think that's satisfactory, right? I
Whichever
put
way,
words in
yeah.
your mouth? I'll second it. Moved by Councilman Eisenbacher, seconded by the chair, that we excuse Councilwoman Kerwin from voting on this item because she's employed by the Boys and Girls Club. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield?
Yes.
Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now the resolution, Councilman Eisenbacher?
Sure.
I wrote down your name.
Resolved that the Troy City Council
What did
hereby
I say?
approves the funding agreement between the City of Troy and Boys and Girls Club of Troy for July 1st, 2009 through June 30th, 2010, and the mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute the documents, a copy of which shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Eisenbacher, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Broomfield,
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Motion passes. You want to tell her to come back in? F6, adoption of the National Incident Management System. And the rest of it? A, somebody asked for this. Oh, Councilwoman Kerwin.
I just want to take an opportunity. NIMS training was recently held at our Fire Police Training Center. All elected officials in the county and many employees through municipalities throughout Oakland County were invited to attend. It was a really well-run session, and the presenters were very complimentary of our police and fire. So I wanted to take an opportunity to recognize the collaborative work that they do and how much safer they have made us by not only training in ICS, which is something that's done locally, but also now the national training, which gives the same vocabulary, recognizes the first person on the incident as someone in charge, and will really help to make us all safer and use all of the resources efficiently on a region-wide basis. So I see the gentlemen are here with us tonight and would like to compliment you. So with that, I would move the resolution as written.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Eisenbacher, that we approve the resolution. And discussion, I'd just like to comment when the chief made his presentation about all the organizations working together. It was very enlightening. We certainly are appreciative of the efforts of our police and fire department, and working with other communities is one of our assets, of course. Discussion, vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Broomfield,
Yes.
Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling.
Yes. Motion passes. Memorandums are noted here. Council referrals, council comments?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Beltramini?
Yes, the only thing I do want to say is Commissioner Burns mentioned the county budget and how some programs would be cut back. And I will tell you that we have looked at, and the circuit court will be cut. And youth assistance is one of those programs that is being looked at. So as you are considering cuts to make and the like, we might put on our thinking caps and see if there is some suggestion we could make to the county for wider partnerships for that sort of an organization. And the coalition will be having issues as well. They're a little more independently funded, but you know, we had the Boys and Girls Club tonight, and our budget is shrinking as well. So I mention that so that the community will begin to know what's going on and what kinds of programs are on the block for being cut back.
Any other comments? I'll just remind folks that tomorrow night we have a special city council meeting at 5:30 to 7:30, and it's at the community center, not here. And then Wednesday, all day, starting at 9 a.m. here in the council boardroom, and then here at 7 o'clock on Thursday. Councilman Eisbacher?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Relative to the comments earlier about the Charter Revision Committee, I do think they should meet regularly, if not monthly, quarterly, just to work on these ideas and to develop ideas for how we can improve the charter. Also, when I was reading through the minutes of our meeting from over the weekend with our agenda, I noted an item that isn't quite clear, and I think it's somewhat of a loophole in our charter that I would like our Charter Revision Committee to consider at their meeting, assuming they have time, and that is vacancies in elective office. And along these lines, what I'm thinking is, okay, imagine I have 3 years left on my term. The filing deadline hasn't occurred yet for the November election, and I get notice that my job is being transferred to another state in January 1st next year. I have time where I could submit an irrevocable letter of resignation for November. The city could have an election, the office could be filled with the voice of the people with a 2-year term. And right now, there's no way for us to do that in our charter. The only way to fill a vacant term is by appointment of the council. And I think that during the time frame before the filing deadline, we should have that option so that the residents maintain a full voice in selecting their elected officials when it's appropriate. So,
I'd like to comment about their time frame, the time of their meetings. I don't know why. I think that they should be able to meet in the evening. It's a problem for the people that are on the committee to have to leave their job to come to the evening. We have all of our other committee meetings in the evening, except for the retirement board, the pension board that meets during the day, and that's a special committee. I don't know of any other one that meets during the day. Is there one?
Building code.
Seniors.
Building code does?
Senior citizens.
Seniors advisory.
And the senior advisory. Except that everybody on that committee, though, is retired, and so they can come then. I think that's a valid point, because we were making a big deal about their attendance. We ought to look at that.
And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
and I believe the senior citizen where they were recently were filmed, in fact. So they took place during the day, and then that film was available for viewers at home. So I certainly agree that we should really consider whether this should go back tonight and take the time to film it.
Well,
and the funds.
Of course, the filming will depend on how much staff there is to do that. We cut back on staff in the community affairs office, so I don't know whether they do. We have to explore that. But I think the meeting time, I think definitely should be changed to the evening. Councilman Beltramini?
I agree. We have several boards that meet during the day. When you look at the roster of boards, there are at least half a dozen. However, the only one that is all citizens, besides this one that I can think of, that meets during the day Brownfield is all citizens. But is the seniors, and they prefer to meet during the day because it's easier for them to get around to do that, but it is pretty important. And so even if we cannot put them on TV, at the very least we need to put them at a time and a place when people can be there to participate, and citizens who want to view the action can be there to witness it at the very least. I understand the staff constraints with not only the meeting late, but the visuals of it. But if we can't put it on TV, then put it where people can actually come and listen and learn.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman.
And that brings up the sporadic meeting times. 2 weeks, 10 days. We no longer have a calendar. So it would be helpful if people knew that on the third Thursday at 7 o'clock, these meetings are held, even if they're every other month. But to do it in 13 days at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for 1 hour on a very important committee like this, I think that's just imprudent.
Sometimes they may have to call a special meeting, if there's things that have to,
Some will have to be rescheduled at a time that people will know.
Right. Any other council comments? Councilman Eisenbacher?
On my point, do I need a vote of council to forward that to the committee, or can we send that on a consensus to the committee for if a person does the irrevocable letter of resignation within the time frame of an election, to have the option of it being on the ballot, where right now the only option is appointment.
Mrs. Bloom?
I do know that there is a charter revision committee meeting scheduled. I believe it's for the 13th. Is that correct? And the items that are on that would be the items that have been referred by council, as well as one administrative item, which we discovered in working through that. Certainly, it would be helpful to have a resolution so that it could be clarified what your intent was. However, I think it will require a waiver of the rules, and I think Ms. Bartholomew is looking at me and trying to get my attention with that, and I believe that's the point that she was going to make.
That is a correct statement. For the record, the last grouping of items that went to the charter revision was done by consensus of this board as well.
And we didn't discuss that item at the study session, so people haven't had a chance to review it and go over it.
Yeah,
It's just being proposed tonight.
I wish I would have had the idea a lot sooner, but it didn't occur until I was reading through the minutes and considering.
Mayor?
Council, was that your Councilwoman Brunco?
Yeah. In reference to what Councilmember Eisenbacher is discussing, is there time when this, if we were to, just a resolution for them to look at it, and then we could still be talking about it, and then they could come back with some of their findings. Is there time at that next meeting to put everything else on the agenda? We did a resolution this evening.
The meeting scheduled for Monday does not have an ending time. It can go on.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The meeting scheduled for Monday does not have an ending time. It merely starts at a certain time. So that meeting can go as late as they stay there and discuss the items.
Councilman Beltrame?
My question is, can that committee only discuss items that we send to them? Or is there a portion of their agenda that says, you know, for the good of the order, is there anything you want to talk about as a committee?
They are not restricted to discuss things referred to them by council.
So if
here.
Mrs. Wilshire wants to bring up the item that Councilman Eisenbacher said, she could just do that on her own, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Why don't you send her an email with the information?
Yeah.
All right? He can send you the information. All right? And then, you know, may go forward or it may not. You know, sometimes that happens. Okay, any other items? Okay, we'll see you again tomorrow. We're in June.